Hi everyone, welcome to this week's episode of No Such Thing as a Fish. Hope you're all very well. I have a little bit of news here, and it is of particular interest to people in the UK and of particular interest to people who love our mothership of a TV show, QI. Now, you all know QI, it's facts, it's funny, it's just like Fish, but it's been going for a full 20 years, and the big news is that all 20 series of QI are now available on BBC iPlayer. So as you probably know, each series of QI is represented by a letter of the alphabet, and so you can go back and watch facts about astronomy, about bees, about campanology, about dog. Well, you get the idea. It's 20 series of QI, so many facts, so many amazing moments from over the years, and it is all, as I said, available on BBC iPlayer. And of course, it wouldn't be a top-of-the-show announcement if I didn't remind you all that we are going back on the road in autumn. If you live in Scotland or in Wales, or indeed, I think we have one show coming up also in London, then do go to qi.com/fish events and get your tickets fast, because I know for a fact that some of those dates are just on the verge of selling out. Anyway, before you go to iPlayer to binge on all the episodes of QI, we better get on with this week's show. So, on with the podcast.
Hello and welcome to another episode of No Such Thing as a Fish, a weekly podcast coming to you from the QI offices in Covent Garden. My name is Dan Schreiber. I am sitting here with James Harkin, Anna Tashinsky, and Andrew Hunter-Murray, and once again we have gathered round the microphones with our 4 favourite facts from the last 7 days, and in no particular order, here we go. Starting with fact number 1, that is Andy.
My fact is that in 1944, the book The Great Gatsby sold 120 copies. In 1945, the number of copies printed was 155,000.
Wow.
I know.
What a switcheroo at the end.
Yeah. I
Beautiful
didn't realise how I was going to deliver it until I got towards the end, and I thought, I've just said 120. Why not say 155 and then ramp it up? Anyway.
Wow, great behind the scenes insight.
Lovely. Got to show how the sausage is made.
Yeah.
So, The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald was a book that was quite popular at first, and then it really tailed off, and then by 1944 pretty much no one was buying it, and it was practically out of print. So then in the Second World War, though, there was this mad scheme that was run by a load of American publishing titans. They clubbed together and they formed this thing called the Council on Books in Wartime, and they decided that they wanted to print and sell millions of books to the army. So the army bought the books, and then those books were distributed free to the soldiers, and they were made incredibly cheap, and 122 million books were given away to soldiers.
Wow.
And it basically created the paperback book market in America. They weren't really popular, and
they were to fit in the pocket, weren't they?
Yeah.
So, which is why Gatsby is good, because it's unbelievably short.
It is.
Yeah, but if you were shot and it went ploughed straight through your copy of The Great Gatsby,
You'd rather have à la recherche de Tom Perdu there, wouldn't you?
one volume on each breast, 2 on your back.
Go on, where are the other 3 going?
One over the genitals and one on either side of the head.
2 over the genitals.
Yeah, why not?
So he died in 1940, and
Fitzgerald.
Yeah, Fitzgerald died in 1940. The book was originally published in 1925. Yeah. He didn't achieve any success in his life, much to the point of we all know that book and his name now. Was this the moment that made him a global name?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Well, he was very famous as a literary figure in the early 20s for his first couple of books, or book, it was Beautiful and the Damned, wasn't it, that he wrote, which did very well, and he was a famous figure on the literary scene. He made a good amount of money, but it was just that Gatsby, when it came out in the early 20s, was quite well received by some people and not by others. It was just like when a book comes out,
he thought it was brilliant, didn't he? He thought it was like the great American novel.
His review was a 5-star.
But then it was only after the war that it became accepted that it was the great American novel.
Exactly.
Yeah,
so from these days it sells about 500,000 copies every year. Wow. You compare that with 120 copies just a few years after his death. I mean, it was
this
nowhere.
year it sold about 500,000.
Exactly. I didn't see where you were going with that.
Like Hannah said, these books came to fit in your pocket, right?
Yeah.
There was 2 different sizes, one to fit in your shirt pocket, one to fit in your pants. They were quite flimsy. They cost 6 cents each to make.
Yeah.
You can still get hold of them today. And Andy, seeing as today is your publication day for your novel, I brought you a gift.
OMG.
And that is one of these books.
Oh my God.
Rumble, rumble, rumble.
Which one is it?
Well, I couldn't get hold of The Great Gatsby, unfortunately. But this is the selected plays of Eugene O'Neill. But it is genuinely one of the ones that was given to the armed services.
Oh, dude, that is so
Wow.
cool. Thank you.
So take it out. Let's see the flimsiness of it.
This is so cool.
They were kind of printed in landscape.
Yeah.
And they would have
I'm
2
seeing that
columns.
right now, and it's shocking to see. Sorry, go on.
Way broader than it is tall.
But they would have 2 columns on each page, so you get more in than, a normal book in quite a small amount.
So cool. Oh, thank you, James.
Oh, you're
That's
welcome.
awesome. And it says Overseas Edition for the Armed Forces, distributed by blah, 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 published by Editions for the Armed Services. So another place that owns these books is the University of Texas, which has about 1,400. And because they were printed on magazine presses, so they really were, and they sort of printed them like a magazine, and then they just sliced it in half. So the University of Texas ones, they're really brittle and brown these days because the paper was not designed to last for 80 years, and they're kept in a thing called tuxedo cases. That's cool, which is it's described as an acid-free enclosure to keep them pristine. I have looked; it just looks like they're in a box. But
Do most boxes have lots of acid in them? I don't have my boxes specify that they're acid-free. Does that mean they're full of acid?
Unfortunately, librarians kept putting them in with the acid. They kept dissolving.
Those big acid vats they have, in libraries.
So comic books were quite popular. Terry and the Pirates was one of the ones that was quite popular by a cartoonist called Milton Caniff. And the ones that he did for the military contained, and this is a quote, damsels as breasty and near nude as Caniff dared draw them.
Wow.
So he took his quite normal comic strip and thought, well, this is for the soldiers, so I'm going to add boobs.
Nice.
Speaking of comic books and associated culture, the video game Legend of Zelda.
Yes.
Yeah.
We probably remember playing as children. Or adults, maybe.
I bought one recently, actually.
Cool. That's absolutely fine, and no judgment here. It was named after Zelda Fitzgerald, Scott's wife.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Although, who else might it be named after? It's not a very common name, is it, Zelda?
Well, she was named after 2 random other people from books, wasn't she?
She was named after someone from a book, wasn't she?
Yeah, I think
Zelda.
her mum found 2 references to
Hang on, was it like
Zeldas.
it wasn't like someone called Zelina and someone called Dar?
No. Fitzgerald, just as his career, I didn't realise that he had a bit of a moment in Hollywood. Potentially he was going to be one of the biggest Hollywood script writers, but he just didn't quite get the break that he needed. And he was part of this group that were called the Legions of Jerks. And that was a name given to them by Jack Warner. And it was quite an amazing pack of writers that were working for Hollywood in that time, in that sort of underneath that name. So you had Aldous Huxley, you had Anthony Powell, you had Dorothy Parker.
Basically the Algonquin group, really.
Yeah,
sounds like.
It's so interesting, but they were all there trying to pump out scripts. And Fitzgerald was brought on, I don't think they used any of his work for it, but he did a week on Gone with the Wind. So
did he?
Yeah, it's such a big...
Didn't he go there because Zelda had got sick and he needed to make some money or something?
Yes.
I think so. He was
going through a bad patch. There's a lot of rumours that he was an alcoholic in this period. And he had a lot of alcoholic problems, but I think in this specific moment with Hollywood, he was actually quite productive and he was off the alcohol. He was drinking cases of Coca-Cola, apparently, to sort of, replace one addiction with another, just distract himself. Wow. And he produced a lot of work. And there's something like 2,000 pages in an archive sitting somewhere of screenplays, of doctored scripts that he did, but virtually none of them, except I think one credit he has properly for a movie.
He wasn't very... he only wrote a few novels and there were a few batches of short stories, and I don't know, the whole thing seems to have gone off a bit half-cocked, his life. It just wasn't very... He joined the army hoping to die. I didn't know this in the First World War. So he'd been rejected by a woman called Ginevra. And again, weird name, Ginevra de Zelda. Anyway, he'd been rejected by her. She'd said, no, absolutely not. I think she was extremely wealthy and he was extremely not wealthy.
Sounds about right.
Yeah. And so he joined the army hoping to die. Trained under Dwight Eisenhower.
Yeah.
Big deal.
Ah, wow.
Yeah. And then he quickly wrote a 120,000 word novel in the hope that it would sell before he died. And then anyway, the war ended, so he was fine. So, because the period where you were American and then being trained and then definitely getting to the war was quite a narrow window because of how late America joined the First World War. So
quite impressive to quickly write a 120,000 word novel. You've just written a novel, Andy. Do you think you could have spaffed that out in interims between army service?
Spaffed out is a funny way of putting your heart and soul into something. But,
well, there was an interesting thing about that, wasn't there? Because later on it took him a bit longer to write the novels. He couldn't just spaff them out. But when Zelda got sick, because she had mental problems, right, mental issues, and he was kind of looking after her and going to Hollywood and doing all this stuff, and so it took even longer for him to write his novel. And at the same time, Zelda decided to write a novel called Save Me the Waltz, which he thought used all of his material. And what it actually done, it was about their life, right? So who it belongs to whoever writes it first. But he was really annoyed because it had taken him ages to do it, but she managed to write her novel in 3 months.
wow.
Yeah.
Ouch.
That is good.
It got a bit spicy between them during the Tender as the Night Save Me the Waltz rivalry.
Doesn't sound good.
They obviously, Zelda and Scott Fitzgerald were the Richard Burton and Elizabeth Taylor of their day, and yes, that is the most modern analogy I can come up with.
Which was basically the same day. Like, they weren't too far off.
You're right, it was about 10 years later.
Sorry,
anyway, when Zelda said she was going to write Save Me the Waltz, Scott was so annoyed that he wrote to the person who was going to publish her book saying, don't you dare publish it. He's got diary entries where he basically plots how to make sure that she doesn't write it. So he says, attack on all grounds, play brackets suppress, as in if she's writing a play, suppress it, novel brackets delay, pictures brackets suppress, as in she did a lot of art, child, as in the child they had brackets detach. It sounds really bad. It is really bad.
It does sound awful.
There was one slight situation was that apparently her doctor said it was bad for her to write novels. Apparently. And so that might have been one of the reasons why he tried to stop her.
Got it. But he did. They did have a chat about who was going to publish what, where he accused her of being a third-rate writer, a useless society woman with an Amazonian and lesbian personality. Which, look, she shouldn't love it, but all relationships have problems.
Well, the thing is, when he said you are a third-rate writer, she said, it seems to me you are making a rather violent attack if I'm third-rate.
Yeah, I mean, he was quite attacked for his writing, wasn't he? He wasn't the best writer himself. As in the editing process...
Wow. Huge claim.
I'm not claiming it. I'm simply reading... So there was Edmund Wilson, who was a critic.
One of the greatest writers of all time.
You should just say he wasn't the best writer himself.
I'm saying there was a lot of criticism towards his writing at the time. So This Side of Paradise, one of the critics wrote, one of the most illiterate books of any merit actually published. Supposedly in the Great Gatsby editing process, punctuation marks just had to be removed because there were like hundreds of them. He just kept chucking them in, and they're like, let's get that back out.
That's what copy editors are for.
No, exactly. But
the best character definitely in The Great Gatsby has got to be Jordan Baker, because she's a golfer.
Okay.
She is a friend of Daisy, and she is based on a real life person called Edith Cummings, who was a friend of the Fitzgeralds. And in the book, Jordan Baker has got a bad reputation that she kind of cheats in golf. But at the time, people saw that it was based on this Edith Cummings and said that actually Edith Cummings was as honest as she was bewitching, because she was famous for being a very, very attractive golfer. She was known as the Fairway Flapper, and she was the first golfer of any gender to appear on the cover of Time magazine.
Oh, cool.
I can't believe you found the golf angle in
I know.
Fitzgerald. Like, there's always a way, isn't there? You see a very distant fairway, you think, I can get there.
What's it? Fitzgerald, he called Zelda something Flapper as well.
Yeah. Flapper was just
fashionable woman.
Oh, I'd never
Short
heard that.
hair.
No.
But Zelda was good at golf, by the way, just to get us back to golf.
Sorry to try and move it away.
So Zelda and F. Scott Fitzgerald used to spend the summers at White Bear Lake, where there was a golf course, and apparently she was much better at golf than he was.
Oh, he won't have liked that.
No.
So him and Zelda had quite an interesting start to their marriage. I don't know how well she comes across. So she was very high society, very wealthy. I think her father was a Supreme Court judge or something. And he was, fine, but he's, as you can see if you read The Great Gatsby, he's kind of obsessed with this posh people versus not posh people. And so Zelda felt that he was beneath her. And so they had a relationship, and then she kind of dumped him for being too poor. And then he wrote This Side of Paradise. It sold out in 3 days. He suddenly made lots of money. And within a week, she'd gone, all right, come on, let's get married. Fair enough.
So F. Scott Fitzgerald's secretary, Francis Kroll, right, the last secretary in his life. Okay, F. Scott Fitzgerald died in 1940. Okay, age 44. When do you think his last secretary died?
Okay,
Yesterday.
let's say she was 20 when she was his secretary in 1944, and she died when she was 100.
Oh, the maths is going very badly for me. I don't like it when people work it out.
She's still alive.
Yeah, all right. Okay, guys, you've really taken the sting out of this one. She's dead. She died in 2015, aged 99, so 1 year off James. But I just think that's amazing that, she would have remembered being F. Scott Fitzgerald's secretary, but she also saw, what's an event, like the alternative vote referendum, or...
Do you think those will be her two main memories on her deathbed? Life flashes before my eyes. The AV referendum.
The Scottish independence vote.
Cannot believe that's the only place you could go from there. Okay.
The 2012 Olympics.
The fall of the Berlin Wall.
When was it? 2015.
2015.
When she died.
Yeah.
So she didn't see Leicester winning the Premiership.
No, sadly.
But she might have heard the first few episodes of No Such Thing as a Fish.
Oh my God! Maybe that's what killed her then.
Stop the podcast.
Stop the podcast.
Hey everyone, this week's episode of Fish is sponsored by Beer 52.
Yes, Beer 52, you know the guys. They're the place to go if you want beer sent directly to your door. And not just any old beer, really interesting beers from all around the world.
That's right, they curate beers from all the microbreweries and they give you a taste of global beer loveliness. I mean, I've never tasted such a variety of beers if it weren't for Beer 52. And this month, they're doing a really exciting box. The theme is Restore Our Earth, which focuses on environmental conservation.
Indeed, they have partnered with the Garden Brewery from Croatia. And by the way, I love Croatian beer, so this is going to be amazing. But what they're doing is they're hoping to draw attention to some incredible organizations who are working to tackle the climate crisis. And they have already contributed £20,000 to the cause.
Yeah, absolutely amazing. And also, by the way, you get a free magazine with your beers, telling you about your beers. It's like little biographies, potted biographies, letting you know where they've come from, how they've been made, who the people in the brewery are, and get to the box first before anyone else in your house, because there's a little tiny snack that they hide in the box, and it's always so delicious and causes huge fights if two people see it at the same time.
I mean, you can always share snacks.
Impossible. These are so tasty. My wife is not touching them.
Well, if you would like your hidden snacks as well as 10 free beers simply for the $5.95 postage, then go to beer52, that's beer52.com/fish.
That's right. So head to beer52.com/fish and get your 10 free beers, all for just the cost of the postage, which is $5.95. Get in quick, open it up, find that snack, run out of the room.
And this week we are also sponsored by Ka-ching! Shopify.
Ka-ching indeed, my friend. This is a very exciting company. Shopify is for those of you out there who are starting a business or you have things to sell and you just want to get it out there on the internet, but you have no idea about how to do it. It basically allows you to create a website and gives you all the tools in order to make it simple, elegant, make it easier for someone who's come to it to buy. You've got 24-hour support from the Shopify staff who are able to help with any problems you might have along the way. This is it. You can become your own business.
This sounds great. I've got a panino shop in North London. But the problem is that whenever anyone comes in and asks for a panini, I kick them out. And I'll be honest, I'm not making much money. So online feels like the way to go.
That's true. And isn't it true as well that the panino shop actually only has one panino per day? So as soon as you've sold that, that's the day done.
Do you remember when the Wu-Tang Clan had only one copy of one of their albums?
Yeah, well, I remember the Wu-Tang Clan. Who are the Wu-Tang Clan?
Did I say Wu-Tang Clan? Yeah, the Wu-Tang Clan, that was me and the Wu-Tang Clan, but we just renamed it because we were doing it together. It's a collaboration. Well, I think one reason why my panino company might do well on Shopify is because don't Pizza Pilgrims use it?
Yeah, Pizza Pilgrims do use it. I eat there a lot, by the way, Pizza Pilgrim, and it just looks elegant, as I say. So big companies are using Shopify to help them sell things.
Indeed, Gymshark, Huel, all sorts of people, and you can join those people and sign up for a free 14-day trial by going to shopify.co.uk/fish. fish.
That's right. So head to shopify.co.uk/fish and sign up for a free 14-day trial and grow your business today.
Okay, on with the podcast.
On with the show.
Okay, it is time for fact number 2, and that is James.
Okay, my fact this week is that to protect the city of Syracuse, Archimedes invented a giant claw that could lift enemy ships clean out of the water. It was so successful that Roman soldiers began to be scared of any piece of rope hanging from the city walls.
This is, just to quickly say, fucking insane.
It's amazing, isn't it?
Incredible.
So, why were they scared of rope if it was the giant claw that...
Because that's what presages the giant claw, isn't it?
Is
you
it-
know,
is
you have
it?
a little bit of rope and you're like, oh shit, what's that rope attached to?
And it's attached to the claw?
Could be.
So does a rope lead out ahead of the claw?
Well,
Or
you
do
need the
pull-
rope because the thing is with Archimedes, he was good at levers and pulleys and stuff like that. So
Lovely.
they all have ropes involved.
Yeah.
And I've seen drawings of this. I mean, it's like a real life size. You know, when you go to the arcades and you've got the claw that you're trying to pick the
yeah.
top. It's like this giant claw.
I
that
don't
is
think
just-
I don't think they're contemporary drawings. The ones that you've seen, they might be imaginations.
Yeah,
of it.
exactly. But
Okay.
like to show what size claw you'd need to pick up
Yeah,
a
yeah.
ship,
Ship.
it's pretty big.
So this is around 212 BC. We're talking the Second Punic War. Rome has taken over all of Italy, but they need somewhere else to take over. So they go down to Sicily, which is where Archimedes lived. And it was currently owned by Carthage, which is modern-day Tunisia. But then the Romans managed to take over it. But then the people in Syracuse, the main city, decided they're going to rise up. So they start to rise up against the Romans. The Romans siege the city, and then Archimedes, the great mathematician, lives there. And he's like, well, I'm going to come up with all these great contraptions that are going to stop the Romans from taking our city. And this was one of these. And the earliest we have for this particular claw thing is by someone called Polybius, who was writing only about 50 years after Archimedes died. So it's a reasonable chance that it was true.
Do you know what's amazing about this fact is that one of the great Archimedes stories is that he created a sort of death ray for incoming ships. So they would point mirrors and they would use and harness the sun, and that would give this great beam that would burn holes into the ships and so on. Turns out that's not true. Now that's such a shame because that's such a wonderful thing. It's very rare that you then get given this gift of an even more batshit idea that turns out to be true.
We don't know. So this is all stuff that's reported about him after. So that's Galen said that, 3 centuries later or something, about the death ray. And we think it's probably not true because it seems completely impossible that you do it. Mostly because to focus a death ray, so the idea was you'd have huge mirrors, I suppose, that would be concave, I guess, and they'd focus a ray directly at a point on a ship. Yeah. But you need to focus it at one point for quite a long time.
And the ship is moving.
To get it hot. The ship is moving around. You need a perfect.
Not if you're being sieged. If you're
That's a
being
good point.
sieged, they might just
they've
sit
tied
there.
up the ship. Actually,
Yeah.
Anna, it has been tried, the death ray, with the mirrors and the thing.
Has it?
So some students at MIT, I think it was in about 2007 or 8, they got 127 mirrored tiles and an oak replica of a Roman ship. And they proved it was possible.
Did they?
They did it.
Nice. Did they put it on the water?
I don't know if they did it or with I don't know if they had to hold the ship in exactly the same place for 6 days or whatever. So it might be untrue, but it still might be possible.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
one reason
tried
that
it,
one reason it might be untrue is, like Anna says, it was quite a while after it happened that people wrote about it. Lucian, I think, was the very first person in 160 AD. But the same story is told of another person, Proclus of Athens. And usually, when the same story is told about 2 or 3 different famous people, usually it means it's probably a made-uppy thingy.
Do you think the grappling hook happened with
Well,
the ships?
I just can't believe it, even though it's obviously people said it happened, but the descriptions are so extraordinary. So I think in Plutarch's description, he said, a ship was frequently lifted up to a great height in the air, a dreadful thing to behold, no shit, and was rolled to and fro and kept swinging until all the sailors were thrown out. I mean, it sounds like one of those rides at a theme park, actually.
Yeah.
You know, the
swinging
pirate
ship?
ship
Yeah.
ones, yeah.
Yeah.
What theme park are you going to that all of the people inside the ride are being shut down?
Before they invented the safety bar.
Plutarch was writing around 10 AD, so that was quite a few hundred years later.
okay, yeah.
And I think whether it happened or not, certainly as you get further away from the supposed time, the stories get less and less realistic.
Yeah. I just love it. Archimedes, there's so many stories about him, though. That's the thing, isn't it? Like, maybe the thing everyone gets taught is that he shouted Eureka and he jumped out of his bath because he discovered the Archimedes principle about displacing water.
He was trying to work out how much gold was in a king's crown. He
But put it in the bath, and the amount of water that tipped out told him how dense it was.
Exactly, yeah. But he was an incredible mathematician. You know, he did brilliant work on the surface area volume of spheres or centers of gravity and floating objects. And so they're really complicated ideas, and it seems unlikely he would have got so excited that he would have jumped out of his bath.
Also, he didn't like baths. We know that he didn't like to go in the bath. Again, according to Plutarch, so writing quite long down the line. But he was writing, 200 years later, saying this guy was a stinky old guy who never took a bath. But he said that his servants used to take him against his will to the baths. And when he was in there, they would put oil on him. And instead of washing himself, he would draw like mathematical symbols on his body. So he could do the maths on his own body.
It's like when you draw, like in the shower, when you kind of write your name on the glass of the shower.
Exactly like that.
I was thinking of it as a kind of clever way of getting a child to eat its peas.
That's really clever. Cover them with oil so they can write their equations on their chest.
No, I don't. I just sort of mean it's a way of tricking Archimedes into washing himself, basically.
Pretending that he's a blackboard.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's a sort of crafty... I tried to find out more recent sources about Archimedes.
Oh, yeah.
So, you know the sites where you type in any celebrity's name, basically, and it gives you all the auto-Google results?
Oh, yeah, okay. No.
So I've been on who'sdatedwho.com. Who is he dating right now? Apparently Archimedes is possibly single, according to who'sdatedwho.com.
Oh, right, okay.
I went on celebwiki.net. Measurements, not available. Bodybuild average.
Are these sites
What are
these?
You know these
what
like
are you talking
these
about?
automatically generated sites that just asset strip from all over the internet, and they just come up with dubious figures of celebrity net worth or whatever.
Yeah.
I just thought I'd try it for Archimedes, and it turns out he's on all these sites, and they
don't know anything about him.
They don't know anything about him.
They've got it right mostly, haven't
Which
they?
just goes to show, like, if Plutarch found it hard, like now celebwiki.net is finding it even harder to
Do you
track.
think in 1,000 years' time there'll be a podcast going, did you know Archimedes was of average build and was probably single?
I think so.
According to the sources that were written only 2,000 years after he died. Syracuse, he was in Syracuse, right? That's where he's from. Syracuse had one very in particular thing in common with the UK today. Can you guess what it is?
It was a services economy. Rather than goods-based.
No. Did you say the UK?
The UK,
or you said the UK, right?
I mean, you're never going to get this in a billion years.
So was it about golf?
It was that they only had one orrery maker.
Oh my God.
So do you remember a couple of weeks ago we found out there was only one orrery maker in the UK?
Yeah.
Well, there was only one orrery maker in Syracuse, and it was Archimedes.
Whoa!
Because he invented it.
But it feels like we've got them on the way up at his end and on the way down at that end. It wasn't in decline then, was it?
And 1,000 years ago, in between those 2 points, like 1 in 10 people made orreries full time.
Yeah.
I can't believe we didn't get that, James. I feel so stupid.
It was looking you right in the face all the time.
Damn it.
He's such a model for the kind of mad scientist trope, isn't he?
Yeah.
Because and it must be true. I guess all these things must spring from a truth that he was so obsessed with his bloody maths. Couldn't even get him in a bath. There must have been something to that.
He was incredible at golf because he could just calculate.
He could count the
shot.
number of shots he'd played.
Exactly.
Amazing.
Yeah. He just had one big lever. His golf club was one huge lever. Every shot was a putt for him.
Do you know you can buy golf clubs where you hold it next to a ball and then it has a little mechanism inside the club head and it just fires out and shoots out and hits the ball exactly the right distance that you want it to go. So you don't have to swing it or anything. You just hold it still and it just shoots off.
Kind of like the alien's jaws in Alien, where it just opens up and
Yeah.
Well, and what's the point in that? Because that does seem to take away some of the playing of golf.
You still got to walk. You still got to walk to where the ball is.
Imagine you're a disabled person who can't swing a golf club, but you still want to play. So you still want to hit the ball and you want to aim it and stuff like that, but you can't swing it.
Okay, so you have to point it right, I guess.
Oh yeah, you've got to point it.
Yeah.
He calculated the total number of grains of sand in the universe as could possibly be in the universe. He worked out that it was 10 to the power of 63. And he worked that out by working out that the entire universe was about 2 light years in diameter. And he was nowhere near. Okay. I mean, he wasn't even in the same ballpark.
You can't.
Is he picturing alien planets that have sand on it?
So people had been saying that there was an infinite amount of sand, and he wanted to prove that actually there wasn't an infinite amount of sand. There was a finite amount, and I can prove that by looking at how big the universe is, looking at how big a grain of sand is, and working out that there's a maximum that you could have. And he said that that maximum was 10 to the power of 63. But unfortunately, he didn't realize that he knew that there were 5 planets, but he didn't know that there were an infinite number of universes and planets and stuff.
The old all I have to do is look at how big the universe is, and that feels like you're going to trip up at the looking at how big the universe is.
It's still very impressive.
It was good. It was impressive because he had to basically invent new bits of maths to do it, because they didn't really have big numbers in those days. You could talk about 10,000, which is myriad. So that was basically the biggest number you could say.
I mean, that is
myriad.
really cool.
And then he came up with like a myriad to the power of a myriad, which is 10,000 to the power of 10,000, and then sort of extrapolated from there.
So weird, the idea of inventing big numbers. It's like inventing big things.
Yeah.
Ooh, the biggest thing they could think of was 10 meters high.
It's
Someone invented
really
the idea.
impressive.
You can see all the academics getting together and then someone going up to the board and revealing a new 0 at the end.
The entire audience goes nuts.
Has anyone considered 10,001?
Okay, it is time for fact number 3, and that is Anna.
My fact this week is that most black swallower fish specimens died because they ate too much and their stomachs exploded.
Wow.
Very weird life trajectory they have.
There's a lot weird going on in that sentence, isn't there?
Yeah. So the black swallower fish is a type of fish. When I say specimens, I mean like ones that we've found. A specimen is something that, a scientist looks at and researches. So it's not clear that this is how most of them die. It's just all the ones we've found have floated up to the top of the water because this has happened. And the reason this has happened is because they're amazing at swallowing. Sometimes too good. So they're about 20 centimeters long. They can swallow prey that is over twice as long as them. I mean, one of them was found with prey 4 times as long as it in its body and 10 times the mass. So if you look up pictures of them, they're just the best. It looks like they're carrying a huge bit of carry-on luggage under their stomach, which is where they store this food.
It's amazing.
It is. They look absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah.
But sometimes their eyes are too big for their stomachs, and they'll eat something so huge that they can't digest it quickly enough before it starts decomposing. And when it starts decomposing, it releases all these gases in their stomachs, and they inflate and they sort of float to the top like a helium balloon, and they explode. And then that's where we find them. Pick them up and go, look at this.
It's insane.
Amazing.
It's kind of not surprising these are the only ones we found, because they live quite deep down, don't they?
Yeah.
Very
They,
deep.
they live in the twilight zone.
I know, I love it. Or they live in the lower twilight and the upper midnight zone. There are 2 different zones.
Do you think lots of really weird stuff happens down there
I
that they can't
bet.
explain?
Yeah. Well, these things are really freaky. One thing we don't know is how they prey, or we're not sure. And it's basically whether they prey forwards or backwards. So they've got these teeth which retract, like a stage dagger, which kind of retracts and then pops back out. So they've got those basically, but they're pointing backwards, I think. So the prey can push prey into its mouth, and the prey then finds it incredibly hard to get out again. But it can go further in, and so we think it either.
That's a horrible option, isn't it? It's like, you can't get out, darling, but don't worry, you can go further in. What?
Well, that's it. They either bite from the tail end of the prey and just work their way up to the head, or they bite the head and then work their way down.
Yeah, they got really sharp teeth, don't they?
Yeah, but maybe they bite something too big and then they just have to keep going.
Yeah, because not only can the prey not escape, but we think that they can't spit anything out.
No,
Because
exactly.
Of these
They're
teeth.
just locked into this thing, so they have to judge quite carefully how big what they're eating is.
It's like if you go to the buffet and you can only go once, you have to really nail it.
You get the biggest piece of turkey.
Yeah. But then you have. It's like if you have to finish it, otherwise they won't let you leave.
And you're like, you've still got 5 sausage rolls there, and you're like, oh no, I knew it. The black swallower fish was discovered in 1864 by someone called James Yates Johnson. and he is possibly more notable, or as notable, for discovering a load of other fish and spiders, but also for donating the moss collection to the Natural History Museum of Madeira.
Ooh.
So just a little moss.
Do you know, James?
Thank you.
There's probably more moss facts at this point in our show from you than there is from me.
It's becoming a thing. I
Andy
know.
teed it up back in the day, but I
I'm
swear
going to have to hand over the moss trousers
Yeah.
at some point.
Jesus
I know.
Christ. Please wash them first.
One cool thing we should say is that their bellies are stretched so thin that they are transparent. So you do get a good view. It's like having a window into their soul.
It's interesting. You get quite a few of these animals that can eat whole prey, not just this one, but most of them, or not most of them, maybe about a quarter of them have got black guts. Inside of their guts has got like a black layer, so that if you eat something which glows, when you eat it, you don't want it to be glowing inside your tummy, otherwise all of your enemies are going to be able to come and eat you. And so they have this black lined stomach which stops the glow from coming out.
Cool.
But the black swallow doesn't have that, I don't think.
That would be really weird if you,
You could see what someone's eaten.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think it would help us eat more healthily if we walked around and everyone could look in your stomach and go, oh yeah, 3 pizzas last night? Wow.
I think it would.
So we're not allowed clothes in this scenario.
They have to be transparent.
Just one little transparent window in the middle of your t-shirt.
Oh, like Rihanna's pregnancy outfit, where she showed off her
Sure.
tummy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really?
And so, yeah. Come on, guys, keep up.
Did you call her Rihanna?
Yeah, I really leaned into the H, I think, yeah.
For all I know, that's how she pronounces it, but I don't think so.
Mate, I think she does, but only in private. And she doesn't, yeah.
It sounds like you sent an email to someone about Hannah.
Rihanna. What do we think of her clothing choice today? Not appropriate for the office, I say.
You know dolphins?
Yeah.
You know how do they breathe?
Through their blowholes.
Yeah.
Well, exactly. Exciting news. Scientists in New Zealand have found a dolphin that breathes through its mouth. Yeah. It's called Hector's dolphin. The species or the subbreed of dolphin, and it's specifically, it's not actually the whole species. It's literally one guy, dolphin who breathes through his mouth.
So what? Sorry, is
Yeah.
he like congested in his blowhole?
They've noticed some
could
weird
be.
thing about the way the trachea links up to the blowhole and how actually he might have been injured or something. But anyway, he's found a way around whatever this past injury was or event in his life, and now he just goes around like a dork, breathing through his mouth. It's so
That's
funny.
amazing.
Yeah.
I wonder if he looks at humans and thinks I belong there, like the Little Mermaids.
Yeah.
So other fish that have interesting ways of eating food, one of them is the Lancet Fish. And mostly this is good because it's sort of vaguely similar to the black swallower in that its contents of its stomach are often in completely pristine condition because it, again, eats these huge meals. So we think it's often fish that live very deep and don't get meals very often. So when you do, you've got to really eat shed loads. It's about 7 foot long. It's very bloody big. Yeah, it's huge. But it will gorge on all these meals and then they just sit in its stomach for ages. But it means that lots of the new species that we discover of fish and squids and octopus are based on opening up the contents of
Is that right?
the stomach, and then you just get a bunch of new species fall out.
The other interesting thing about lancet fish is that they don't see each other very often because they live quite deep down. And so when they see another lancet fish, they're going to want to mate with it. And they don't want to, have problems with genders and stuff like that. So if 2 lancet fish come together, they're hermaphrodites and they can change when they meet a new one.
Do they argue about that?
Well, I thought it, but like when you're walking down a pavement and you're not sure to turn left or to
Yes.
turn right because someone's walking
Yeah.
towards you. I imagine there's a lot of that going on.
Yeah.
So there are some times where they accidentally both change to male.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. They both change to female.
Oh, sorry. They have a little laugh about it and then move on.
Let's call the whole thing off.
What? So do you end up just having sex with that person, James?
If you're in a remote enough place, it's actually wisest to have sex with that person because you might not see someone for days. If you're going on a country walk, it's safest to.
I guess it's our responsibility to repopulate the earth. What? We're in Henley.
I found a pretty weird fish
Oh, yeah?
that I want to mention. This is called the Caligano, and it's in Lake Malawi in East Africa.
Okay.
And it's what's known as kind of like a sleeper fish.
Right.
It does this thing
It
where...
pretends not to be a fish for most of its life, and then it just comes to life as a fish.
Exactly. It's sort of, hanging out with some crabs, sort of pretending to be part of the family, getting all the info, waiting for the moment to arrest. No, this is a fish that plays dead basically in order to eat food, and it lays down and it just plays dead, and smaller fish will come to sort of either check it out or maybe get a nibble on it, and as they come it suddenly goes wah and jumps up, well, not jumps, but like, you know, whatever fish do, swims up and eats everyone, eats all the spectators.
It's
coming
like going to a
Rubberneck.
buffet and you get eaten by the sausage roll.
Exactly.
I got a slightly off-piste thing about guts, because this was about the black swallower and how it eats.
Yes.
So I was finding out about uses of cow guts, right?
Oh, yeah.
Did you know that like top-flight tennis rackets all used to be made of cow intestines?
Hey,
It was used on the strings, wasn't it?
It was the strings. But until about 10 years ago, as in like really recently, there was this Norfolk firm called Bow Brand, right? And I read a few news articles about them, and they made tennis racket strings and harp strings out of cow guts.
So, well, imagine if you accidentally got those mixed up. That'd be a very melodious game of tennis, wouldn't it?
Turn up with your harp on court. But yeah, and I gave them a ring because I thought, I can't believe this. It's true. And they said, oh yeah, we don't do it anymore. But until about 10 years ago we did. And it took 4 cows to make one tennis racket.
No.
What? Yeah.
That's too many cows for each. Because they use like 5 tennis rackets per game.
I know.
Yeah.
And that's why you'll often see around the edge of the court like 20 cows just waiting to be
Anxious look on their faces.
I think you can play on with that racket, actually, Roger.
At least they didn't use silkworm guts. Do you remember we talked about that a while ago?
Yeah.
not a silkworms.
Yeah.
Was that just the top end players, or is that every?
No, this is
racket
top
in the
flight,
world?
and they used to have top end, and they used to have they used to send a team to Wimbledon. They would have a little place where they would restring your rackets for you for the top players, and they would
A stable where they do that, wasn't it? Around the back.
Yeah, and anyway,
That's why they come out blood spatters when they go back onto the courts.
So they all made, but they're all like plastic now, are they?
I think they are, yeah. And they said I spoke to a really nice lady at Bow Brand, so thank you to her for talking to me for quite a long time actually about this stuff. And she said that demand really slackened off about 10 years ago, but fortunately it coincided with a huge increase in demand for harps. No idea why, but basically they just pivoted the business.
Did you ask her, like, what happened 10 years ago with that harp, and then suddenly it played in the background as she thought about what happened? The Sloane's viperfish can eat very big things, and it does it by opening its jaw up to over 90 degrees. So it massively opens its mouth. Yeah. Anna's doing it right now.
I think I can go over 90, actually.
Actually, how big do you think your mouth gape is there, Anna, would you say?
Circumference or...
Let's say...
Angle.
No, top to bottom in centimetres.
Oh.
You'd have to ask Archimedes. It says here, so...
Yeah.
4.5?
4.5. The largest mouth gape of any woman in the world is 6.52 centimetres. So you're getting there. It's Samantha Ramsdell. She can bite through 4 single-stacked cheeseburgers in one go and fit an entire large-sized French fries from McDonald's in her mouth.
Oh wow, standing up. So she eats fries vertically. Is that what you're saying?
I think
no.
you bundle them like straws.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then you just
I thought you meant the full length.
No.
Cheese fries. That's a real cheese fries vertically. It's some kind of sick burn.
She can be seen on TikTok sometimes with a guy called Isaac Johnson, who has the male record gape. And his is 9.52 centimetres.
Oh, God, that's big.
Are they a couple? Because I want to see them snog.
Yes.
Oh, no one wants to see that today. Oh, my God.
They can snog, but they can hold a billiard ball in between their tongues as they're doing it.
Isaac can fit objects such as a baseball, a soda can, or a large apple in his mouth.
Oh, that's really put it in context for me, yeah.
I once saw a really big apple at the offices of WeBuyAnyCard.com in Haringey. I reckon he could fit that in because it was a fucking massive apple.
Oh. Good
Sorry,
plug for WeBuyAnyCar.com.
Yeah, I'd like to drill down into this a bit. Like, was it on display? Was it, you think,
I reckon.
You think our cars are good? Wait till you...
You should have... Honestly, this apple was so massive.
Yeah,
it was
it
Dan's got like a large coffee cup here. I reckon
Yeah.
it was as tall as that.
Oh, that's
right.
insane.
And all I could do when he was talking to me was look at this apple because it was so massive.
Were you trying to sell them a car at the time?
I gave them, sold them the car, yeah.
You gave them...
I'll
know
take
what?
one apple.
Oh my God, it's Jack and the Beanstalk all over again. You go home, your aged mother is saying, did you manage to sell the car to let us live? No, but I got this big old apple.
Can I just say, in Jack and the Beanstalk, right, the moral of that story is that you should sell your cow for beans. Because he gets the beans and he gets a massive beanstalk and then he gets a golden chicken or something.
And how much of that have a golden chicken?
You've misread that story.
Does he not get a golden hen?
golden
or something?
goose?
Golden
Yeah.
goose.
Does he get a golden
then
goose
the
that Tom-
giant,
steals
the
it from the
giant
giant.
climbs down the beanstalk after him, and then he has to cut the beanstalk down.
But he
and
does
it's
all that.
Yeah.
Like, basically, he's taken a risk at the very start of that story, you know, selling his car or whatever it was for some beans. And then he's had to go through a few troubles, but at the end, he gets a golden goose that
Yeah.
lays golden eggs.
And
So
how
the
mu-
moral of the story is do something stupid. At the end, it'll work out fine.
Are you trying to justify giving away your car for an apple? Because it feels like you are. How much?
It's a big apple. Okay, it's not any old apple.
Look, my wife didn't buy this, and you guys aren't buying it either.
Stop the podcast.
Stop the podcast.
Hey everyone, this week's episode of Fish is sponsored by Babbel.
Ah, oui, oui, c'est vrai, Dan. Babbel. It is a place where you can learn to speak languages, like I just did a little bit of French there.
Oui, and it was très bien. That's, I think, French. Anyway, Babbel is absolutely amazing. This is the place that you absolutely need to go to. If you've ever thought to yourself, I just need to learn a language, but I can't motivate myself, I can't find a teacher, this is the new version of it. It's an app where they consult with some of the greatest speakers teaching these languages around the world to put together all sorts of classes. There are 15-minute lessons that you can do. They have their own podcast. They focus on teaching you the pronunciation of certain words.
Absolutely. I love the speech recognition technology, which means you can say syndicat d'initiative into your phone and it goes bloop bloop because you got it right. Although quite often doesn't give me that noise because my pronunciation is awful. But you can improve your pronunciation and all of your language skills with Babbel. And right now, Babbel is offering our listeners 6 months for free with a purchase of a 6-month subscription. And you can get that by going to uk.babbel.com/play and using the promo code FISH.
That's right. So head to uk.babbel.com/play and use the offer code FISH to get 6 months free. You could learn 6 languages in that time if you're James. If you're me, you need another 6 months just for the basics of French. But use that offer code FISH and you will get those 6 months, and it's highly, highly recommended from us. So please give it a go.
Allez, 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 on with the podcast.
On with the show.
Okay, it's time for our final fact of the show, and that is my fact. My fact this week is that there is a cathedral in Norway currently restoring its rooftop with large amounts of urine from a retired field horse called Norik. And Norik likes to pee into a bucket at specific times every single day. Wow. So,
A lot to unpack there.
a lot to unpack here with this story. I should just quickly say I got sent this story by a friend of mine, Riggs, who lives in Norway. She spotted it, and it was a calling out for horse urine. So the story is basically that there is a very old cathedral there. It's called Nidaros Cathedral. It's in Trondheim, and the idea is that they're doing the roof at the moment. But the problem is that in order to get the roof back to the state that they want to get it to, they need to oxidize the copper. And in order to do that, it's been discovered that you can use horse urine or cow urine.
So to oxidize the copper, you mean like it goes from the shiny color to like a green color?
Exactly. So if you know a green color on a cathedral roof, that is the state that it needs to be in, but it takes a long time to do that, and it can take decades, in fact. But by using horse urine, they are able to speed up the process. The issue is, where do you get that much horse urine on?
From a horse.
From a horse, right? But, you know, who's going to give you that urine? You need to do a calling out to the world, or specifically to that very tiny bit of Norway. And so that's what they did. The people said, do you have horse urine? We need it. And this was spotted by someone who has a very old horse called Norik, who has this very curious thing, which is that Norik likes to pee at certain times indoors every day.
Right.
And so what they do is they bring Norik in. He comes for his daily pee at a certain time, and he's been supplying sort of most of the pee.
Amazing.
Okay.
They sent it on Facebook, didn't they?
Yeah.
It's on a group called It Happens in Binneset, which I think is a town near Trondheim. And they said, hello, a somewhat special request, but we would love to get our hands on about 4 to 5 litres of horse urine. If you have an opportunity to help with this, feel free to contact Henning Grott, stonecutter at the cathedral.
I'm interested that they collect it in a bucket, because that does imply that someone's waiting there all the time. 'Cause you don't know when a horse is going to wee. You just go into the stable and they've done it all over the hay.
But this is the point, though.
So it chooses and does it over the bucket.
Yeah. I mean, there's actually a video that you can see online. So Norik is about to take a pee. It's basically just a shot of his penis in camera, and then the urine starts coming out. A bucket comes underneath it and starts collecting.
So actually there's a stable hand who has to sit in the stable all day, every day, until he starts peeing, and then shove the bucket underneath his willy.
This is how you get a urine sample from a horse. I was looking up how you do it, and I was on the website horsesidevetguide.com, and it said what you do is you get a disposable coffee cup. So Dan's got a disposable coffee cup here, and you attach that to a broom handle, and then you wait for the horse to start peeing, and then you just move it slowly into position, and then you catch the midstream urine, which is the good stuff if you're testing horses' health.
If you want to at home picture how big my cup is, by the way, it's roughly the same size as a big apple.
Well, like a huge apple.
That's just for the listener.
Like an apple that I would say would be worth a car.
There's a few different ways that they could have done this instead of putting horse urine on the roof. They could have covered it in hard-boiled eggs. And that would have done the job. They could have used Miracle Grow plant fertilizer.
I've got some of that.
Can use that to oxidize your copper.
Oh, great.
And is that because of nitrogen? It's the ammonia we think in the urine, isn't it?
Yeah, so in the urine, it's ammonia. Now, urine doesn't have any ammonia in it, but it does contain things that bacteria like, and you have bacteria in the air, so that bacteria goes into the urine, and then the bacteria creates ammonia. So you couldn't use just fresh out of the horse urine. You need to leave it to stand for a bit. But sulfur also works, and that's what you get with your hard-boiled eggs.
That's so clever.
It would stink, though. You've smeared egg sulfur all over your church roof.
More than horse piss.
Yeah, actually, that of course.
Another one you could do would be salt and vinegar crisps. Apparently, that is apparently an age-old. Can't be that old, but it's a way of doing this. That's how
they did Westminster Abbey originally. Yeah.
Just back to this idea about Norik going in at certain times and peeing into the bucket. I was reading a blog the other day, and it actually has this really interesting thing, which is that horses can be taught to pee on command.
Okay.
They can be toilet trained.
They can be toilet trained.
Really? But what about that old saying, you can take a horse to the toilet, but you can't make it piss?
Yeah, so, in the article that I was reading, it did sort of say that what it's used for really is, horse shows. If a horse is going out into the ring and it's about to do an act, you don't want your horse shitting and pissing everywhere, do you? And so if you can get your horse to go beforehand by, teaching it when to go, you're fine. So what you need to do is when you see a horse pissing, quickly go up beside it, and just start whistling. Just go and whistle to the exact length of their pee. Now, obviously, you might not have that much breath, so catch your breath, back into the whistle.
Yeah, no, I know what a whistle sounds like.
Great. So you've done that. Go away. You're seeing the horse pee again later. Go back quickly to its side.
Yeah.
As it's peeing. Do this for weeks and weeks and weeks. And then after weeks, you'll find that when you go near a horse that probably needs a pee, and you go, it goes the other way around. The horse starts peeing to your whistle.
Amazing.
It's suddenly you're enabling the piss via your whistle.
It's not much of a superpower, is it? It's making any horse piss on demand.
And so you get therapy horses though, don't you? Or guide horses. Some blind people who are allergic to dogs have to have guide ponies.
Just a small pony.
Shetland, like a little Shetland pony, not
Shire horse.
Yeah.
I mean, I haven't been on the London Underground when a horse comes on the carriage.
No, but that is a thing.
Yeah.
I guess they have to have some kind of training system.
Yeah.
Well, you can pee.
there are nappies as well. You can get horse nappies.
You said that as if it was a really standard piece of information.
I thought it was.
So who wears the nappies? The guide horses?
Yeah, or horses that are doing, I guess, presentations.
That's worse. In dressage, you'd rather your horse just wee than you've got some huge nappy. Rodin used urine on his sculptures. Not horse urine, but he used to instruct his assistants to go out into the his outdoor studio and urinate all over the bronze statues in the yard.
Oh, bronzes. I was thinking stone. I just thought, that won't have a reaction. But okay,
bronzes.
He didn't piss on the kiss.
Sadly not.
So actually, he just got his helpers to pee on it. He didn't collect them or anything. He just said, "Go and piss on that."
Yes.
It's a studio,
Yeah.
isn't it? It's like Damien Hirst. Damien Hirst often won't piss on his own stuff.
Will he not?
No.
No, yeah, don't piss on your own turf.
Save that for the critics. Well, Vincent van Gogh also used cow urine. There's this colour called Indian yellow, which was this huge secret. And it came in these balls, and it was really popular in the 19th century because it's an unbelievably vivid dye. And no one knows how it was made. And it was this huge secret. And it turns out that this village in India called Mirzapur was taking its cows, and it was restricting their diet basically only to mango leaves.
Yeah.
And there are some claims and counterclaims about it, but there's pretty good evidence that it did happen.
Yeah,
and they would take the cow's piss and they would heat it and they'd bake it down to a syrup, basically. They'd dry the syrup so it's ultra pure. And The Starry Night by Vincent van Gogh,
Cow piss.
you're seeing cow piss when you see
Really?
those stars, yeah.
No way.
Yes, you should go and stand. What gallery is it in? I want someone to go and stand there and just tell everyone who comes and starts admiring it. Just go, cow piss, you know? Cow piss.
You can use horse urine to grow pineapples.
Really?
Which they do at the Lost Gardens of Caligano, which is in Cornwall. And they still make pineapples in that old way that they used to. So do you remember how we said that you used to be able to buy a pineapple for the same price as a car? Now I know what you're going to say.
You got confused. You thought it was a pineapple. when you saw this really big apple, James, was it spiky? And did it have like green spines?
It was open brackets pine, close brackets apple. No, so like pineapples used to be really expensive because they were so expensive to grow in the UK because we don't have the climate. And so the Lost Gardens of Caligano in Cornwall still make them in the old-fashioned way. And the way that they do that is they get a greenhouse, but they heat up the greenhouse by putting horse manure and horse urine and piles of straw in the corner, and they kind of, like a compost heap, will get hotter and hotter, and that heats up the building.
What?
But it does mean every pineapple costs £1,200 to grow.
That's a lot.
So it's a lot of money for one pineapple, isn't it?
Yeah.
And they reckon that the pineapple that they're growing at the moment, or might have just grown, is going to be worth around £10,000 in total because of not just how much it costs to make, but also its rarity and stuff like that. But even though it's worth that much, they're not going to sell it. They're going to cut it up and feed it to their staff.
Nice.
Wow.
It's quite nice, isn't it?
I did read that when they started doing this, they gave the second one they'd grown to the Queen.
Oh, that's great.
But they did make sure that they tasted the first one to ensure that it did not taste of horse urine. Horse manure.
Good idea.
That is a risk.
On urine collection, the first ever people doing IVF.
Oh,
Very early patients. This was, when was it? 70s, I think?
Well, Louise Brown was 77, I think.
Okay, yeah. So the two doctors who were pioneering it really were called Robert Edwards and Patrick Steptoe. And it was really old Steptoe. And it was quite controversial. You know, they refused various grants because it was kind of creating life artificially. But early patients had to live in the centre basically for 2 or 3 weeks as inpatients while this was going on. And they had to collect all of their urine during treatment because they needed to monitor their hormone levels. So they just had to carry these huge plastic containers every time they went off-site.
They did have an amazing pineapple garden around the back.
Yeah, it was really basic stuff. And the other thing they had to do was after your embryos were inserted back into you, the women had to spend an hour or two crouching down with their bottoms in the air, just in case gravity helped. They weren't sure whether it helped or not.
Wasn't it the case, by the way? I actually don't have any information on this, but I remember reading that in the early days of penicillin, we didn't have enough penicillin itself to go around for every patient. So what they would do is they would give a patient some of the penicillin and then wait at the other end of them for it to come out through their pee.
Yeah.
And they would extract the remaining penicillin that was in there and then give that to another patient.
Because you would have thought that you have metabolized the useful bits of the penicillin.
Oh, yeah, that's
so
the point.
surely it's diluting and diluting and diluting.
But I guess you've maybe got enough left over in it that it's worth extracting from the pee. That's really gross.
I was reading an article which said that action must be taken over the surprisingly widespread problem of stable staff urinating into racehorses' bedding.
I saw that.
Did you?
Yeah.
And what's the problem?
Well, it's just horrible for the horses because they've got a bed covered in groom piss.
Well,
Why
but that's
are they
not a
doing
problem. The problem is the testing.
I think it's a problem. It's bad for the horses. It's bad for the horses. You don't want to lie them down on sort of wet, damp hay or straw.
Horses sleep on their urine a lot.
But they should be mucked out. They should be,
But when you muck out the horse's hay, you're going to muck out the human urine with the horse urine, aren't you?
I also think, though, if I, God forbid, ever wet the bed, I don't want other people coming pissing on my bed going, well, you've already done it, so I might as well
exactly.
as
Do you think it probably is worse? Like your own farts smell okay, but someone else's is really horrible.
Feels like it'd be less. I don't really want to sleep on my own wet bed.
Yeah.
But I would rather do that if it was a choice between that and the bed that Andy's pissed in.
Thank you.
Sure, yeah. Great.
Exactly, yeah. No, I thought they were saying it was for the horse's benefit, but you're saying it's also for the problem of doping.
The reason it
Because the
came
grooms
up...
are all coked off their heads.
The reason it came up is because the grooms were all coked off their heads. The
But they
reason
don't
it
test
came
the
up...
straw.
Yeah, they do.
They test the straw?
Yeah, often you'll do the testing by testing the horse's straw because that's where you get the horse urine for. So the bedding will get tested as a sample. And there was a trainer whose horse was found to have been sort of doping, but I think with something that you wouldn't dope with, like marijuana or something. I can't remember actually what it was. But it turned out to be caused by the stable staff urinating in the box while he was mucking it out.
This horse has been asking a lot of big questions about the universe.
Listening to a lot of jazz. I don't really...
Okay, that's it. That's all of our facts. Thank you so much for listening. If you'd like to get in contact with any of us about the things that we have said over the course of this podcast, we can be found on our Twitter accounts. I'm on @Schreiberland. Andy?
@AndrewHunterM. James?
James Harkin.
And Anna?
You can email podcast@qi.com.
Yep, or you can go to our group account, which is @NoSuchThing, or our website, nosuchthingasafish.com. Check it out. It's awesome. It's got all of our previous episodes up there. It's got a link to the tickets for our final leg of our Nerd Immunity Tour. We're going to be doing that in September of this year. Come check it out. It's an awesome night. We would love to see you guys there. But if you can't make it, don't worry, because we'll be back again next week with another episode. We'll see you then. Goodbye.